Welcome. Welcome. You've been one of my favorite people all these years in philanthropy. I have certainly learned a lot from you. Everyone has grown to respect you in more ways than I could possibly tell you. So let's kind of begin at the beginning.
Absolutely. And I think the greatest lessons I learned in those early years was what the women told me, right? They wanted a place where they could come in. They wanted a place to be warm. They wanted a place to be called by their name. They wanted a place to get all their needs met in one place because they felt like they were carrying their home on their back everywhere they went. And so with all of those things, what they ended up, I think what that transformed into and translated into was, for me, was that there needs to be safe, there needs to be loved, their needs for community and a sense of belonging were the most wonderful, beautiful part of who they were.
Speaking from your heart, like it's still...
Oh, it's so raw.
Yeah,
like,
it's so
well, and
raw.
every day, it's every woman, right?
Tell me some of the best lessons learned about wraparound services necessary to help families that are in the situation that they find themselves.
I think some of the best lessons learned are not to be content with what you have, that you have to connect with the guests, and they will tell you what they need. I can remember in those early years when we opened that first one, it was for women with children, and then we had 7-year-old Thalia, who came every night and just kept saying, "Why can't my dad come in? My dad's outside, he's cold, can he just have a bed?" And so the next shelter we opened in another building was for moms, dads, and kids, right? But it was because our kids were telling us. And then I can remember multi-generational families. Can we please bring grandma? Can we bring the aunt? Can my aunt come in? We live with her now, why can't she come in? So we opened shelters for multi-generational families. And then we learned on a front page of the Times there was families sleeping in their vehicles because they didn't want to give up their pets. And so 4-legged family members got to come in too. And the next shelter we opened, we did that. And so it's just been this transformative path.
You've had tremendous success with Diversion. And I know that Diversion as a program is something we've believed in for a long time. You want to talk a little bit about that in terms of how you have used it and how it prevents some people from losing homes?
Oh my goodness, yes. I will say, and thank you for giving us the capacity and for believing in innovation to be able to do that. Most nonprofits don't have that access. And so Barb Poppy, who's a national expert on family homelessness, told us in 2016, she talked a lot about diversion. And that meant going out to meet families where they are, those unsheltered families in their cars, in their tents, sleeping on quiet cul-de-sacs, sleeping across the street from their kids' school so they wouldn't miss out on their education. But the importance of meeting them where they were and making sure that you ask them what resources they need to move back into housing quickly. And oh my goodness, was that transformative. And I will say, I was so skeptical at the beginning. We started with one outreach worker who went out and utilized this diversion, which was a program and now became the approach, right, for all of our services. And it's really coming beside families, asking them what it is that they need. Families are smart, they are resilient, they know exactly what they need to get back into housing and sustain it. And so we worked together with our families, we asked them those questions. Sometimes it was $50, to finish that deposit. Sometimes it was getting connected to a landlord. Sometimes it was just giving grandma a $250 grocery card so she could take care of the kids while they went to work and they could continue to live there. It was meeting those families' needs and asking them and not making assumptions as a social worker or a provider about what that family needs. And sometimes it was the first, the last, the down. Sometimes it was negotiating the debt down with a credit company to make sure they could get back into housing. And so Mary's Place learned from all of those and put that program into an approach that now every family calling the intake line, which is thousands of families every year, 150 every day now, gets that
150 calls a day.
calling every day. And now we get to use that diversion approach with everybody. What is it that will help you solve your crisis right now?
Wow. What keeps you up at night?
It's that list.
It keeps growing.
Keeps growing. And
How many families do you have to turn away every day, every week, every month?
every day, out of those 150 calls, probably 60, because we have, qualifying parameters that get the families on the list. Not everyone's calling for shelter, right? But those 60 families that are calling for shelter, one or two get a bed on a day. The rest are outside, sleeping outside, in tents, in places not meant for human habitation.
No, absolutely not. What can we do as leaders in the community to see this differently or approach it in a way that we can actually solve it?
Such a good question. I think when we go out and we talk with, first it's individual conversations a lot of times, right? With those companies, just like we had with you about here's the need, here's the struggle, here's what we're trying to do, here's what works, right? We have a three-pronged approach. We offer shelter, we have outreach services, and we have prevention, keeping families in their hard-won homes. How do we do that better together? And what is it that resonates, and what skill sets does your company bring to be able to share with their neighbors? Because we know that you love your neighbors in your hometown. So whether that's data, whether that's HR and best practices, whether that's innovation, whether it's helping us write manuals for scaling up on how to do this in a statewide approach, whether that's advocacy and using your government affairs folks. So it's really finding out what their niche is and partnering that with our list, a long list of needs. And that's on the one-on-one approach. But I think overall, it is the advocacy that will change lives, right? We know what works. We have the best practices. We have the data. We know how to take that and scale that work together. But it will take a large elevation in voice to advocate for more government funding. I will tell you, children are left outside and without the adequate funding that is needed. And so we continue to talk about that. We continue to elevate that. We spent 2 years the last 2 legislative sessions, really saying that families with children need to be called out in every homeless service legislation so that they are eligible for funding. Because what happens, the unintentional consequence means that they are not included and they are not eligible. And we know what happens when those children are not included.
Well, not only are we looking at generational poverty that will probably continue to grow, but we're also looking at mental health issues that will encumber the city in a whole different financial strain.
I will tell you, thanks to your investments, one thing is that the outreach program started at Mary's Place on the diversion approach has become a national model. We did that together. We wrote that white paper. We've been out at national conferences and sharing. We've taken that and give that information away of how to start an outreach program, what that should look like, because that was transformative work. We were able to move families into housing at half the cost of sheltering them and at half the time spent in shelter. It's been amazing and something that we know we can scale, and something equally as effective that we're doing now together in partnership with you is scaling prevention. We know that we have to reframe the homeless service system and lead with prevention. Reducing that trauma on children, really reducing the generational impact that you're talking about has to happen. And the only way you can do that is by keeping children in their homes. And we know the cost of that is, again, less than half the cost of shelter. Most of that goes directly to paying down past debt, paying the first, last, and deposit, and getting that family back in home. And what the data is showing is those families stay in their home, right? And so we are doing national studies with the Lab for Economic Opportunity and at Notre Dame. PwC is writing the playbook for us together with our staff to make sure we can scale that as well. So that is on the horizon. There are new approaches, there are new innovations, and we must lead with them. We cannot build our way out of this with enough shelter in this nation, but we can lead with compassionate care, with intentional conversations on a diversion-based approach, and keeping families in their homes where they belong.
We have work to do.
We have work to do.
We have work to do, we have stories to tell, and we need to bring more people in.
Thank you for loving us so well. I love you so much.